Stephen Crane's novel The Red Badge of Courage consists of 24 chapters which follow the protagonist, young Henry Fleming, through his experience as a Union Army private during the American Civil War. The book can be organized into three parts. Part 1, consisting of chapters 1 to 6, concerns Henry's state of mind before his first battle, his initial war experiences when he flees from battle. Part 2, consisting of chapters 7 through 13, explores Henry's experiences away from his regiment, and Part 3, consisting of chapters 14 through 24, focuses on Henry recovering his courage and returning to his regiment, his subsequent heroism, and his final sense of achieving manhood. Though published in 1895, The Red Badge of Courage takes place sometime during the American Civil War, which lasted from 1861 to 1865. The initial setting is the campsite of a regiment of Union Army fighting for the northern states. The soldiers can see the campfires of the Confederate Army, their enemy, which is fighting for the interests of southern states. Most of the story is told by Henry's point of view through his thoughts, memories, and perceptions. The scene opens with an argument about whether the regiment will finally move out after being in camp for several months. As Henry listens to this debate, he remembers his life back home and his mother telling him how to behave on his first adventure off the farm. Henry felt proud and daring when he left home to go to war, but now he wonders how he will do when confronted with the reality of battle. He seeks information from the tall soldier, Jim Conklin, who tells him that if everyone stands and fights, he will stay, but if everyone runs, he will run too. This makes Henry feel better since he does not have to pretend to be more confident than his comrades. When the regiment is ordered to move, Henry marches along, worrying about whether or not he will be brave. He studies his companions for clues to their feelings, but they sing and boast confidently. Henry becomes sullen and brooding, so that a loud soldier, Wilson, asks him what is troubling him. Henry cannot answer. As they draw close to the front line, Henry feels curiosity about the battle weary returning soldiers. He begins to fantasize that the officers are leading the soldiers into a trap. Henry is afraid to voice his fears and he feels deeply isolated. His regiment marches for days to get into position, sleeping and marching with no information until one morning Henry is kicked awake by his commanding officer and is hustled into battle. Henry's regiment is positioned and repositioned without seeing battle. Though they are frightened by retreating soldiers, dead bodies, and bullets whizzing overhead, suddenly Henry sees the officers on their horses, and the enemy is upon them. He fires his rifle without thinking and suddenly breaks into a sweat, a sensation that his eyeballs were about to crack like hot stones. He feels a red rage and fights boldly until the enemy is driven back. Henry feels joyful that he has stood up to the first test in battle, but when the enemy returns unexpectedly, Henry loses his nerve. When he sees others running, Henry runs too. He loses all sense of direction and runs blindly in search of safety. As he runs, he sees many different battle scenes, ending with the general who declares that the soldiers have held the enemy back. But Henry cannot share in the victory since he ran from the front lines. Henry is full of conflicting feelings. On the one hand, he feels like a criminal for running away, and on the other, he feels as though he has been cheated by fate of his glorious career as a brave soldier. He imagines how humiliated he will be if he returns to his regiment, and in a fit of rebellion and despair, he sets off through the woods, away from the Union Army. He seeks solace in nature, which he imagines to be sympathetic woman, with a deep aversion to tragedy. As he goes deeper into the woods, Henry becomes more calm and rationalizes his escape. The deepening forest muffles the sound of the cannon. Henry runs away, imagining that the dead man is pursuing him, and convinced that nature has turned against him. As his wanderings bring him close to the front again, he hears a fierce battle going on and guesses that the scrimmage in which he took part earlier was just a prelude to the real battle which is going on now. Henry encounters a line of wounded soldiers leaving the front and falls in with them, fascinated with the soldiers' stories of the fighting. But when the tattered soldier asks him kindly, "Where a hit, old boy?" Henry has no answer and runs away. He wishes he too had a red badge of courage, a wound that would prove that he had done his share. He runs into his old friend Jim Conklin, who is badly wounded and who dies in a field where Henry and the tattered soldier led him so that the artillery will not run over his body. He abandons the tattered soldier in the same field to die and wrestles with the shameful secret that he is a deserter. Henry debates within himself about whether to return to his regiment, but is both terrified of the humiliation of being recognized as a deserter and fearful that he cannot live up to the requirements of a soldier under fire. While he broods over his dilemma, a company of retreating soldiers sweep past him, and Henry is once again terrified. As he tries to get information from them, he grabs a soldier who, also terrified, hits Henry on the head with his rifle. Henry is badly wounded but manages to stagger on until he encounters a friendly person who walks him back to his regiment. His comrades had assumed that Henry had been killed and now assume he has been wounded in battle, and so no explanations for his absence are necessary. In the final section, Henry develops into a seasoned soldier. He is greatly relieved not to be exposed as a deserter and enters into the battle with a sincere desire to be brave. He saves the company flag from being captured by the enemy, and he exhorts his fellow soldiers to re enter the battle at a critical moment. For this, he is prized by his superior officers and seen to be a valiant soldier. Henry notices that he has become tranquil about the war and is a reassuring presence to the untired men around him. In the final chapter, Henry feels a quiet manhood, non assertive but of sturdy and strong blood. He proceeds into the next round of battle as a golden ray of sun came through the house of leaden rain clouds.